everyone, welcome to my channel. I am Rafaela, and I'm here today with Loriade. Hey Loriade, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's so lovely to have you back on the channel. You've been here a few times before in the vlogs, etc. But I guess today we're taking on a slightly more formal setting, As you know, I've started a series on my channel called the Graduate Series, where I invite, young professionals, graduates from different sectors to talk about their experiences, getting into, their job sector, finding a job, etc. I think that for a lot of us, when we went to university, we thought we would come straight out and land jobs and be all happy and jolly, and we didn't quite realize, what goes into finding a job, some of the struggles that you have, etc. And so, because it's not something that's often discussed as much, some people who are in situations where they face more, challenges, obstacles, and barriers despair a little bit, or feel like potentially they're not, achieving as much, or they feel a sense of like inadequacy. And so the whole point of this series is just to have people come and give, their advice, their perspective, and encourage other people out there. So without further ado, would you like to formally introduce yourself, tell us what sector you work in, what's your job title, etc., please?
Sure. So my name is Loriade. Of course, that is not the Yoruba pronunciation, but this is how people call me at work. And yes, I insist on people calling me by my full name at work. I am a program officer of health programs at an international NGO. I am based in Washington, D.C. in the US, but I've worked in several other countries. I've been in my current role for about 3 years now, and I work in the field of international development / global health. And I've been in this field pretty much since I was in uni. So I did a first degree in psychology, so completely unrelated to what I was doing, but I found a way to link it to what I wanted to do, just having an understanding of human behaviors, having an understanding of how humans interact with each other, I felt was a good basis for going into the field of public health and international development. And then, so after my first degree, I immediately went into a second degree, a master's in public health. And that is a 2-year degree here in the States. And throughout that time, I was doing internships, I was doing research, and thankfully that helped me then land some consultancies for about 2 years after my second degree. And then I ended up getting this current role that I'm in right now. So this is a brief overview of my journey to date, but I would be happy to provide more information.
Thank you. Okay, first and foremost, pause, because I did not know that you did psychology. And I'm your sister, and I'm just so flabbergasted because I'm like, wait, what? I didn't know this. I don't know.
Yeah, so my journey has been interesting. When I first, in high school, in secondary school, I wanted to do medicine. I wanted to be a physician. I fell in love when I was reading Ben Carson's book, but we don't really talk about Ben Carson anymore, for political reasons. And then, of course, I also really enjoyed Grey's Anatomy, and I was like, whoa, I would love to do this, help people, save lives, etc. But then I went to uni first year, and I was like, these science classes are not it. I'm not going to do physics. I don't want to do organic chemistry. I don't like medicine that much to put myself through that. So what else can I do? And I had, because of my upbringing, my parents aren't in the international development field, as is your mom. So, I grew up with several examples around me of people who had careers as international civil servants, or people who contribute to the development of low and middle income countries. So I was like, oh, this is something that I actually would like to do, especially as a young African, and I do identify as a young African. Having a career where I'm able to give back and make a difference on the continents that I consider home was very important to me. So at the end of my first year of uni, actually, I ended up doing an internship for about I can't remember now, between 2 weeks or a month at a hospital in Ghana, where I worked with a public health campaign. And then I was like, oh, this is so cool. So instead of treating one person at a time, I could be in a field where my work could impact several thousands or even millions of people. And so there's still that component of like giving back, helping make a difference, and improving people's healthcare and health outcomes that I found very interesting about public health. So from that summer, basically, of doing that internship, I had been looking for more opportunities to get similar experience. But on the academic front at uni, I was like, okay, I'm not doing sciences. What am I supposed to major in? What is my degree going to be in? Because obviously you need to specialize in something. And I'm fortunate that in the US, you're able to change your major or your area of specialization until the end of your second year. So that's when I took a few other classes that first semester of my second year. And then I realized, oh, psychology is a good link. I also enjoy the classes. I'm good at psychology, so why not do that? So that is kind of how I ended up with psychology. I just felt like it was a good link to what I wanted to do. I was good at it, thankfully, and I did enjoy the material.
Exactly. Amazing. I think you actually answered what my next question would have been, which was more so to, I wanted to further inquire as to whether your degrees and what you studied at uni inspired what you then went on to do, or whether you knew what you wanted to do and then you chose your degrees at university based on that. But I think you've touched upon that. So yeah, and I suppose, okay, so we talked about universities, and so you went to quite prestigious universities. You did, yeah. So I'll let you talk about that. But more than anything, I just wanted to ask whether you had any advice for people going to university, especially, trying to get into Ivy League universities or Russell Group, as we call them here in the UK, whether it's all about your prospects and your academics, or is there another way that you can make yourself stand out as a candidate?
So that's a very good question. I was actually fortunate to be invited to join the board of admission at my uni in my third and fourth year. And then I was also working in the office of admission. That was my student job for 3.5 years. So I just in that environment, I learned a lot of things about what admissions officers are interested in. And one thing I will say is that it goes beyond the academics. You know, obviously there are a lot of smart people in the world, so what differentiates the different smart people that you encounter? How can admissions officers are interested in creating classes of people with diverse experiences, people who come from different backgrounds, who have different stories and interests, and this enriches the conversations in classrooms, right? So obviously someone who is a straight A student who has great scores on tests, etc., but has really nothing to say in terms of their interests, their hobbies, their career aspirations, etc., because they only focus on their academics, is probably not going to be as interesting as someone who maybe doesn't have straight A's but has a story about why they don't have straight A's, and has a story about their interest, their non-academic interests. They play a sport maybe, or maybe they started an NGO, or maybe they've been volunteering somewhere and that inspired their career journey. So really, what I'm trying to say is that it's about the story. We are more than our grades. We are more than our test scores. We are human beings, people with backgrounds, with stories, with experiences. And I would encourage anyone who's interested in applying to uni, especially the top unis, to make themselves stand out in that way. Like, the scores are always going to be there and someone is going to be able to look at them, but who are you beyond those scores? Who are you beyond those grades? What makes you interesting? What can you contribute to a classroom or the campus community that you would like to join? That's what I would encourage applicants to emphasize.
I really love that. I think it's so true, and it actually hits even linking back to then what we're hoping to achieve with this series in respect to even people going to jobs. When you're applying to companies and organizations, what makes you stand out? What can you bring? What makes you a unique candidate? What's the asset really of having you? And so sometimes we forget about that. We just think, it's all about the grades or, what you've done and what you've achieved, and it's true. But then we tend to almost undermine the human aspect of it, So I've really, really loved what you said. And just to link back as well. So you went to Wellesley.
I did.
Wellesley is an all-girls school. So I suppose my question is, how is that like? What made you go to Wellesley? It's very different, especially I know you have like all girls schools, but to have all girls, universities, I think that's quite rare, isn't it?
It is very rare. I don't know, there are less than 15 in the US, I'm pretty sure. Actually, don't quote me on that. But Wellesley is among the best, obviously. And also, so my story about Wellesley, I heard about Wellesley in my last year of secondary school, of high school. I was making a list. I went to a high school in the UK, actually, where we were only allowed to apply to 5 schools in each country. So I did 5 in the US, 5 in the UK, 5 in Canada. And I had to be very strategic about the 5 in the US because that's kind of where I wanted to go. And I heard about Wellesley, first of all, from an admissions counselor who said that, our school had a good relationship with Wellesley. There were several students from my school that went there. Should I look into it? And then I found out actually that my dad's cousin also went to Wellesley in the late 70s, early 80s. So I looked at this school and then I saw, oh, Hillary Clinton went to Wellesley. Oh, Madeleine Albright went to Wellesley. And these are people who are in the field of international affairs, which, remember, I had an interest in. So I was like, oh, so if these high profile people who were like secretaries of state in the United States, the first woman and the third woman to be secretaries of state in the United States went to Wellesley, that's a pretty prestigious school. And then, of course, it was in the Boston area, and that's where there's Harvard, MIT, and all these other schools. So I was like, you know what? This actually makes this school very interesting. Let me look into it. And, interestingly enough, I was admitted to Wellesley. And then when it came down to choosing between the schools, my parents and I came to the conclusion that Wellesley was the best fit amongst the different options that I had. And I have to say, there were, some bumps along the road, along the 4 years that I was at Wellesley. But overall, when I look back on the experience, I'm so grateful. First of all, because that's where I realized that the road to medicine was just not mine to take. That is just not what I wanted to do with my career. So I was able to find something else that I'm very passionate about. And I was able to get the support I need to get opportunities that launched me on that path to the field, to where I am today. Also, I think being in an all-women and school and environment, there's something powerful about that. So you're in classrooms and it's all other women, and it's not like competing with a man who wants to always be the first one to respond to all questions, who always brings his male perspective to everything. There's something empowering about being around so many other smart women where you're like, wow, this is so amazing. And then also the president of the school is a woman, the dean, the treasurer, etc. So you look, especially as a 17, 18-year-old, you look at all these people and you're like, wow, this is impressive. Like, so many women in powerful positions, and they all want me to be, the same kind of person, to be well-spoken, to be confident, to enter into rooms and feel like I can occupy the space, to feel like I deserve a seat at decision-making tables. I was like, wow, this is the best environment for me. And from a personal perspective as well, I have to say that Wellesley was a small campus, and there are only about 2,500 students. So for me, coming from my background and being pretty much of an introvert, so being in an environment where I was in one of like 15,000 students at some of the other universities around the world, but especially in the US, was a big factor. I think I would have struggled if I went to a school where my professors didn't know my name, where there was nobody that I could talk to one-on-one and get like that professional academic support and professional advice. I think I would have personally struggled a lot if I went to a uni that was much larger than Wellesley. So I'm also grateful for that.
Absolutely. I love what you said. I think definitely I went to one of those universities and it's definitely very hard even to stand out to, establish that sort of like rapport with your supervisor, your teachers, etc. So completely agree. Loretta has been very modest about, her institutions that she's gone to, because you also definitely went to John Hopkins, which is, outstanding. We only aspire to be, a fraction of, what have done and you have become. So that's amazing. But thank you for sharing that. And I suppose my next question to reel it back into what you do now. So yes, I suppose I want to ask what your organization does and what your role typically looks like. I suppose a day to day is not necessarily the same, especially with global health and international development constantly changing their constant, components to tackle or to, think about. But then what's a typical day like for you? And yeah.
That's a very good question. So I'll start off with my organization. So it's I don't know, we're a mix of like a non-governmental organization, so non-profit, and also a consulting firm. A lot
Okay.
of what we do is work closely with, we call them change agents or stakeholders in countries, in low and middle income countries, and support them in improving the systems to provide better education, better health services, better nutrition services to their populations. So we're very much concerned with building the systems that are in the countries, strengthening the systems in countries to ensure that people in those countries are able to do, the work that needs to be done to help their populations be better educated, be healthier, be better nourished, etc. So we do focus more on health, nutrition, and education, but there's still a bit of other work on like governance, advocacy, accountability, monitoring and learning and evaluation. But that is in conjunction to those three big areas that I mentioned. So I specifically work on health, and we do health programs, a variety of health programs, but our specialty is really health financing and health system strengthening. So health financing would be like how to help a government develop a policy to be able to pay for health services so that the population doesn't end up paying a lot. How do we help the governments, for instance, create health insurance programs? I mean, you're very fortunate in the UK to have a very good NHS. You don't have to pay for health services, but that is not the case for a lot of countries, including the US. So we're really working with countries to help them get to this system of national health insurance, and then also what we call universal health coverage, making sure that the entire population has access to health services. So day to day, I don't know. Like you said, it varies. A lot of meetings, a lot of emails, because like I said, we work with partners in countries. So with the time difference, with the fact that, we can't just walk into each other's offices. We do have to have pretty regular check-ins, make sure that we're following the work plan of activities that we agreed with our partners, that we're making sure we're always providing the support that they need at the appropriate time, etc. So actually, as I'm saying, this is a work email that just came in. So, but yes, this is a quick summary of what we do and what I specifically do.
So carrying on, you obviously talked earlier about, having done internships and, different placements and having worked, across the globe, specifically on the African continent. And when I first did my introduction episode to this series, and actually a couple years ago when I talked about my experience finding a job, I explained that my lack of work experience and internships was, affecting greatly my ability to find work, because this is something that employers really look for. So I just wanted to know, how did you go about finding those internships? Was it more so connections, or did you, have certain websites that you went to? And how hard is it to get onto those kind of like internships? Because the thing is, the truth of the matter is, public health, diplomacy, international development, it's very hard to get into. Really.
No, I completely agree with you, and I will be honest. It wasn't easy. So I said, the internship I did in Ghana, at the end of my first year in uni, that was I asked my mom for help. She was based in Ghana at the time. The second year, at the end of my second year, I did a 10-week internship at the University of Michigan in the US, and I found out randomly about this program. But it wasn't international development focused. It was very much about public health, and how to support underrepresented minorities in the US. So you see, I had to find a way to link it to what I want to do, but still it was very much like US health. Then the third year, I found a program through my school, but I had to do an internship, and I looked everywhere. I knew that I wanted to be in DC because I was like, okay, this is where a lot of the international development, international affairs work happens here in the US. So how can I be in that space? And I was fortunate again to reach out to family members, to reach out to friends. I really leveraged, my networks. So LinkedIn, I don't know, spend a lot of time working on your profile on LinkedIn, for prospective students, I mean, and young professionals. Spend a lot of time working on your LinkedIn profile and look at also the other people in your network, because those are the people who can help you get into jobs. So once you put on your page what you've done, what you studied, what you're interested in, then reach out to people who will go back to your page and be like, oh, this person is interested in this. I know someone who did this. I can connect them. Or like, so yeah, I really leveraged my network, reached out to people that I hadn't spoken to since like first year of uni, people that I hadn't spoken to since like senior year of high school, and they also provided advice. I found also a list of websites that post jobs and internships on international development, and I can share that with you so you can add it in the description. But I spent so much time there. I created an Excel sheet. I was so determined, because people say this, but it's actually true. Looking for an internship or a job is an actual job. You need to have a strategy. You need to have a process. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make a list and write down every single company where I've applied, when I applied, if I hear back, if I've done an interview, if I didn't, blah, 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 blah. Just keeping track. Also, it's a good way to make sure that if, let's say, you do get like past the first and second interview at a job, then chances are you can reach back out to that person, to the human resources office in that job and ask for feedback. If on the other hand, you never even heard back from that company after posting your first cover letter, then maybe this isn't someone that you want to write back to the following year. Maybe you should give a little bit of time to yourself, to the company, to see that you've grown, you've had more experience before you reapply. So that was my logic for making that list, just keeping track of where I've applied, if I've heard back, what kind of role I've applied to, etc. And yeah, I completely agree with you. It's not easy at all. I remember and because I went through this process when I was applying for internships in my first year of uni, in my third year of uni. My fourth year, I knew that I was going to graduate school. So I was like, okay, I'm set. I don't need to do an internship after I finish my first degree. I just need to focus on getting ready for my second degree. But at the end of the first year of my master's degree, my second degree, we have to do an internship. It's part of the program. We call it's called a practicum. And it's basically to apply what we've learned. And that's when the process starts all over again, looking for a place where I can do my practicum. Fortunately, because it's a well-renowned program, as you mentioned, and the school has a career development office, I was able to go through there and apply to a fellowship program, and then they matched me with a place. Having said that, it wasn't guaranteed then that this place was going to take me after my degree. So then after the end of my second year, we're back to job hunting. We're back to applying to jobs. And this is where, again, the network really matters. One thing about going to the different schools, and you went to great schools as well, is just that, like, beyond the degree, beyond the education that we get there, you spend a lot of time in classes with other people who then become part of your network, who are then people who can tell you about opportunities. Your professors also. I was fortunate in school to get close to 3 professors that I continue to reach out to even after I graduated. And I would tell them, I'm looking for a job in this area. Do you know of any research project? Do you know of anyone any company, etc.? So I would reach out to my old professors. And then, of course, my classmates. It's yeah, it was. I have to say that like that job search after I finished my degree was a whole different experience. I didn't. I knew that I wanted to go back to Africa. I knew that I wanted to work in African countries. So I was very much focused on how can I find something that allows me to be back in to work in African countries. And coming from the US, there's that like, I don't want to do something unpaid because at this point I've done 2 degrees. I think I should be paid for the work that I do. I think I've passed the internship level. So I didn't want to be unpaid. At the same time, I didn't want to do work that was just, basically a glorified assistant. Not to say that that's bad, but it's like after doing a master's degree, I think I would like to get experience that like allows me to use the skills I've learned and learn new skills as well. So use that role as a platform to really launch my career. But I also had to be humble enough to understand that I was coming, yes, with some internship experience, but I hadn't actually worked in an office at that point, right? Because I went from my first degree straight into my second degree. So there was a lot of like, maybe a company doesn't want to take the risk on me because that would mean completely training me, etc. So I had to like assess that and understand that as well. But from that point of view, it was really just back to the spreadsheets, back to you apply somewhere, you put a list, you apply somewhere else, you reach out to people, you reach out to professors, also internship supervisors, etc., to really find the breakthrough. Yeah.
Okay. And I think you actually addressed what my next question would have been, which was obviously best practices and things that you wish you'd known. And I think the main thing that I heard from even today's discussion has been networking, talking to the right people, making your list, doing your research. I think that's so important. And yeah, just having a strategy, I think, more than anything. And I think that's something that, a lot of us have had to learn because, as you said, I've had a similar situation to you where you finish your degrees as well. Um, it's very humbling once you finish your degrees and then you're applying, and then this is somewhere where they're placing you, and you're not trying to be boastful or whatever, but the skills and the knowledge that you had learned, so you feel like you should be there, you feel like perhaps you're past internship level, etc. And it's really, yeah, it's not easy, but you eventually get there. And I think, as you said, one thing that I've had to learn is using that LinkedIn and the network as well. It does come in handy, even if it's just to have conversations with people who then puts you in touch with other people. People just want to share the knowledge, etc. So I definitely agree with you. And I suppose to round it off now, because I'm conscious of time, you obviously talked about wanting to work on the African continent. And my last question would be, so what's the next step for you? Because obviously you're in the US now. Yeah, so do you see yourself moving? Would it just be on the African continent? I mean, Asia is also forever, developing at a very fast pace. And then, yeah, would you work within another organization, for example? Would you work for a government instead of like, organization and charities? What's next for Lauriade?
That's a very good question. I have to admit, I've been asking myself that question a lot, especially since COVID started. First of all, because we've had so much downtime to think about our lives and just what we want out of life. But
Yeah.
also just thinking about, especially in health, seeing how the private sector and the government got together with non-governmental organizations, just seeing all that collaboration and partnership
Yeah.
has really made me realize that all of my experience so far has been very much NGO based and international organization based. And I would be curious about working for the private sector or the government, most likely the US government for now, and see, what is international development, what is international health from their perspective? How does a company, a private sector entity, which is for the most part focused on making money on business, how is that company also able to do work to advance international health or education or nutrition? That is something that I'm very interested in right now. So I have to say, um, in terms of where to do this work, I've been advised from my professional mentors and like other people that I've spoken to really try to diversify my experience. I'm coming as a young African woman with a lot of experience in Africa. So I've been advised, why don't you try to get some experience in Asia so you can be seen as someone who's able to apply the skills, the knowledge, the experience from her work in Africa to another setting. That's very seen as very valuable, apparently. Having said that, I'm very much attached to the African continent. I will always seek opportunities to travel on the continent, to live on the continent, to work on the continent. So we'll see about working in Asia for now. We'll see. If the opportunity presents itself, I'll welcome it, obviously. And also, I'm not, ignoring Europe as well. I know that there's a lot of work being done. I know that DFID in England, for instance, does a lot of work. There's also the Development Agency in France that does a lot of work in international development. So, there are several countries in Europe as well. Obviously, the World Health Organization is based in Geneva in Switzerland. So is the UN agency for UNAIDS. So, there are several international organizations also based in Europe. So should I, change my mind about exploring the private sector and the government, I may find myself in an international organization in Europe. You never know. But really my overall message here is to say that I'm very much open. I have been asking myself this question for the past couple of months because I'm very eager to build on the experience that I've had so far. I think I've learned a lot. There's obviously always more to learn, but I'm also at a stage in my career where I feel like I could continue taking, I wouldn't say risks, but like stepping outside of my comfort zone, if that makes sense. So, staying in the same company for like 10 years is just not what I see for myself.
Right, you want some diversity, a bit of change. I agree with you. And I suppose I've asked my last question, but we talked about traveling, and our good sis over here has a blog. The fans have been waiting for more trips, but obviously the pandemic put a spanner in the works. Would you like to plug yourself quickly? And also just, I suppose, talk about the vision behind the blog and what's to come.
Thank you. So the blog actually started interestingly, after the end of my master's degree, because I ended up doing a consultancy with someone who had won a contract with the World Health Organization Office for Africa, which is based in Congo in Brazzaville. And through that work, I was able to travel to Kenya and Liberia and interact with key stakeholders there. So even before my current role, where this is what I do regularly, I had this opportunity right after getting my degree. And for me, it was like, wow, this is amazing. I never in a million years, I'm not even, I don't mean to say it in a negative way, but I didn't think that I was going to end up working in Liberia. And mind you, I did my practicum internship. So the experience between my first and second year of master's in Tanzania for 4 months. So I had that experience of living somewhere on the continent that is not my home countries, not the countries where my parents come from. But it was very eye-opening for me to then go to Kenya, East Africa, and then after that, go back to West Africa and Liberia. And I was like, wow, like I come from this continent. I'm so proud to call myself African, but there's so much to learn. So that is when I developed this mission goal to visit the 54 independent countries in Africa before I'm 54. Hashtag 54 before 54. And created a blog to share my stories. As I said before, also, I was very keen on working on the continent. So after that experience, I got another experience to work in Niger. On a monitoring and evaluation of a project there. And so I got to spend also 1 month in Niger. And throughout that time, I was just traveling around, traveling in Nigeria, traveling in Cote d'Ivoire. After the experience in Niger, I got another experience that took me to Rwanda and as well as Congo, Brazzaville through working with the World Health Organization Office for Africa. So at that point, I was just like, this is amazing. I get to do what I like career-wise and also interact with stakeholders in different African countries and just travel. So yes, I'm working, regular hours. I'm a young professional. I'm very focused on that. But after hours and on weekends, I get to explore. I get to taste different foods. And for me, it became really important to share my experience. I think, on social media, especially on Instagram, we see a lot about Greece and Egypt and, I don't know, safaris and so many different places that in Dubai. Yeah, we see so many pictures about certain destinations and very little about African countries. And like I said before, there's not like I said before, but I mentioned, for instance, Egypt and like Kenya for safaris, or like maybe South Africa. But there are only so many countries that people think of when they think of Africa. Mm-hmm. And I was going to countries that are not necessarily well known, but still have so much to offer. And I was like, I want other people to see this and feel inspired to visit. So yeah, so you can check out my Instagram page, Lori Kemi, LORIKEMI, as well as my blog, www.lorikemi.com, to find out more about my travels. Like Alexia said, I haven't really been traveling. Honestly, I haven't discovered a new African country since 2018. I've been to African countries, but not a new one. My last new country was Mozambique, where I went for my birthday in 2018. So I'm really in need to travel. I'm debating between going to visit your mom as my next destination, and also going to Victoria Falls, Zambia and Zimbabwe. I've been wanting to go to Victoria Falls for a very long time. So, or I might do both. I might go see your mom and then go to Victoria Falls.
Exactly. Why not? The world is your oyster, and the pandemic has taught us that, unfortunately, tomorrow is not promised. So do it all today. But yeah, anyways, thank you so much for this very insightful and also inspiring chit chat. Honestly, thank you. I really appreciate it. I think definitely international development, global health is something that a lot of people would like to get into, but sometimes they get deterred. I know a lot of like my friends during my degree in international relations, which also links to that. Some of them have just gone on to do completely different things because you just feel like there's no hope. But we definitely need more people. We need to, magnify people's voices, experiences, etc. To, make those relevant changes, implement those programs, etc. And yeah, I hope that whoever is watching, you were able to be inspired, advised, and supported with whatever your journey is. Feel free to comment in the section below. Go check out my sis, her Instagram and her blog, because I know that when she starts traveling, she's going to be on go mode like she was before. And I'm just excited to see, what's next for Laureate in the future, where we'll find you and all that. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on the channel.
Thank you for inviting me. It was really nice to speak about my experience, and I really hope it helps someone. And feel free to put the link to my LinkedIn. So if anyone wants to reach out to me, I will be happy to provide additional suggestions, support. And like I said, I will also share a list of all the websites where I spent hours looking for jobs.
Amazing. See, you guys, you get the plug. But yes, thank you so much. And I guess if you guys haven't done so, be sure to subscribe to the channel, put your notifications on, comment below, share with anyone who it may help. Give the video a thumbs up to like, and I'll see you all in the next episode of the Graduate Series. If I hadn't said so, episodes come out every Wednesday evening, either at 5:30 p.m. UK time or 7 p.m. UK time. It depends. It alternates, but every single Wednesday there'll be a new speaker. So we'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.